more than 3,000 years ago. Inside the wealthy coastal city of Ugarit, a desperate message was pressed into wet clay. Enemy ships had appeared. Nearby cities were burning, and something terrible was approaching. Ugarit's soldiers were away. Its warships were somewhere beyond the coast. Inside the palace, the king begged his allies for help, but no army came. No ships returned. Ugarit stood alone. Then the enemy reached the city. Flames climbed across the rooftops. Palaces collapsed. The streets emptied, and one of the greatest cities of the ancient world disappeared from history. But Ugarit was not alone. Across the eastern Mediterranean, cities fell, kingdoms vanished, powerful empires that had ruled for centuries collapsed within only a few generations. An entire world was beginning to disappear. Trade routes broke apart. Writing vanished from entire regions. Palaces that had ruled for centuries were abandoned. Their kings disappeared. Their stories were forgotten, and many of those palaces were never rebuilt. Around 1200 BC, civilization across much of the eastern Mediterranean seemed to fall apart. Not one city, not one kingdom, but an entire network of powerful civilizations. What could destroy them? Almost simultaneously. To understand the disaster, we must first return to the world that existed before it. A world of magnificent cities, powerful kings, crowded harbors, and wealth beyond imagination. A world far more connected than it appeared. Egypt, the Hittite Empire, Mycenaean Greece, Babylonia, Assyria, and the wealthy kingdoms along the coast. They were connected through trade, diplomacy, royal marriage, and war. The most powerful rulers addressed one another as brothers. They exchanged royal letters, gold, ivory, weapons, and precious gifts across thousands of kilometers. Their kingdoms remained connected. Their armies depended on it. Their workers shaped it. Their rulers measured power through it. Bronze created their weapons, their tools, and much of their wealth. It was the metal that built their world. But bronze carried a hidden weakness. Creating it required copper and tin, materials often separated by enormous distances. If the ships stopped sailing, if one kingdom fell, the metal holding their world together could disappear. At the center of this system stood the palace. It collected the harvest, employed craftsmen, organized trade, equipped armies, and distributed food. Almost everything passed through its gates. When the system worked, it created extraordinary wealth. But everything depended on everything else. The farms depended on the palace. The palace depended on trade. Trade depended on distant kingdoms. And if one part failed, the entire world could follow. For centuries, the system had created extraordinary wealth. But by the late 13th century BC, the first warning signs appeared. Food supplies were shrinking. Grain shipments became desperate, and beyond the palace walls, unrest was growing. Then, the rains began to fail. Fields turned brown. Rivers weakened. Harvests disappeared beneath a burning sun. Across parts of the eastern Mediterranean, hunger was beginning to spread. One failed harvest could be survived through trade. A neighboring kingdom could send grain. Merchant ships could bring food. But when several regions suffered together, there was nowhere left to turn, and the ships began arriving empty. Inside royal palaces, kings dictated urgent messages: send grain, send ships, send anything that might prevent starvation. Food was no longer simply wealth. It had become a weapon against death. Then the ground itself began to move. Across this unstable region, earthquakes struck ancient cities, walls cracked, palaces trembled, and kingdoms already struggling with hunger were forced to rebuild. A single disaster could be repaired. Walls could be rebuilt. Roofs could rise again. But earthquakes came alongside hunger, war, and economic collapse. Each new disaster made recovery more difficult, and while their people struggled, the great powers continued fighting. Egypt and the Hittite Empire battled for control of Syria. Thousands of soldiers marched, chariots crossed the desert, and years of warfare consumed gold, food, and lives. At Kadesh, Ramesses II presented himself as a victorious warrior. His temples showed enemies crushed beneath his chariot, but neither empire achieved complete control. And behind the images of victory, both sides had been weakened. Eventually, Egypt and the Hittites chose peace. A treaty ended their long struggle, but peace between two kingdoms could not restore the missing harvests. It could not rebuild every city, and it could not stop the crisis already spreading. Inside the palaces, royal tables remained covered with food, but outside, farmers carried empty baskets. Workers received less. Families grew hungry, and loyalty to the rulers began to disappear. Not every city may have fallen to foreign invaders. Some enemies were already inside the walls: hungry workers, desperate farmers, people who no longer believed their rulers could protect them. Then Egyptian records described something new: warriors moving across the land, ships appearing along the coast. But they were not traveling alone. Women, children, entire families were moving with them. The Egyptians recorded several names for them. Different peoples, different origins, united by movement and war. Today, history remembers them beneath one mysterious name: the Sea Peoples. Who were they? Raiders searching for wealth, mercenaries without kings, families escaping famine, or survivors whose own cities had already fallen. Even today, their true identities remain uncertain. Perhaps the Sea Peoples did not begin the collapse. Perhaps the collapse created them, driven from their homes by hunger, war, and destruction. They sailed toward kingdoms that were already weakening and carried the crisis with them. As kingdoms weakened, the seas became dangerous. Merchant ships disappeared. Palaces lost essential materials. Workshops became silent. Soldiers went unpaid, and one failure created another. Then the destruction reached Cyprus. The island supplied much of the copper that the Bronze Age world depended upon. Warehouses burned, ports were attacked, and the metal-feeding distant empires stopped moving. Without dependable copper and tin, bronze became harder to produce. Furnaces grew cold. Weapons remained unfinished. The metal that had strengthened their armies now revealed how completely their world depended on trade. In Anatolia, the mighty Hittite Empire began to fracture. Food supplies declined. Political struggles divided the court. Enemies pressed against its borders, and urgent messages arrived faster than the king could answer them. Then the inhabitants began leaving Hattusa. Royal carts passed through its monumental gates. The palaces emptied, the streets fell silent, and the capital of a great empire was abandoned. The Hittite kings had once spoken to Egypt as equals. Their armies had controlled vast territories. Their name inspired fear. But after the collapse, their central empire vanished, leaving behind an empty throne. Farther south, watchmen at Ugarit searched the horizon. Then they saw the sails. The warnings had been true. The enemy had arrived. But the barracks were empty, and the city had almost no one left to defend it. Inside the palace, scribes prepared desperate messages. Send soldiers, send ships, send help. But the kingdoms that once protected Ugarit were fighting for their own survival. No answer could arrive in time. The city burned, its palace collapsed, and Ugarit was never rebuilt. But beneath the ruins, its clay tablets remained, preserving the voices of people living through their world's final moments. Across the sea, the palaces of Mycenaean Greece also sensed danger. At Pylos, officials organized coastal guards. Soldiers collected their weapons. Signal fires appeared along the shore. They knew something was coming, but the preparations were not enough. Pylos burned. Mycenae suffered destruction. Tiryns fell into decline. Across Greece, the great palaces disappeared, and the world of their kings came to an end. Within only a few decades, the Mycenaean palace system was gone. The kings disappeared. Their throne rooms stood empty. Ordinary communities survived, but the world of royal palaces, specialized scribes, and international trade had ended. The palace scribes had recorded everything: grain, weapons, workers, offerings to the gods. But when the palaces disappeared, their writing system vanished with them. For centuries, Linear B would remain silent. Across the Levant, some cities burned, others were abandoned. Many returned, but they were smaller. The age of enormous palaces was ending. From the ruins, new communities began to rise. But one great power still stood. Beyond the Nile Delta lay Egypt. Its temples remained wealthy, its armies remained strong, and ruling over them was Pharaoh Ramesses III. Then they appeared. Warriors advanced along the coast. Ships moved beside them, but behind the weapons came families. Children, possessions loaded onto carts. This was not simply an invasion, it was a people searching for a new home. Ramesses knew they were coming. Along the Nile Delta, Egyptian archers waited. Warships moved into position. The river channels narrowed ahead, and inside those waters the pharaoh prepared his trap. When the enemy entered the delta, Egyptian archers opened fire. Ships collided, oars shattered, warriors fought across crowded decks. The fate of Egypt was decided on the water. Ramesses III claimed victory. The invasion was stopped. The temples celebrated. Egypt had survived, while kingdoms across the Mediterranean disappeared. But the pharaoh's victory could not restore the world beyond his borders. The enemy fleet was gone, but so were many of Egypt's trading partners. Harbors became quiet. Foreign territories were lost. The royal treasury weakened. Egypt had won the battle, but lost the world. That had made it wealthy. Then, even the workers building royal tombs stopped receiving food. They laid down their tools, left their workshops, and protested. The state that promised eternal order could no longer feed its own people. The catastrophe was enormous. But it did not destroy everyone. Egypt survived. Assyria survived. Babylonia survived. Yet none emerged unchanged. Each kingdom was weaker, more isolated, and surrounded by ruins. Along the Mediterranean coast, some cities escaped complete destruction. As the old empires retreated, Phoenician merchants sailed farther. Their ships carried timber, pottery, precious dyes, and the beginnings of a new trading world. The old palace network had collapsed, but humanity continued. Survivors rebuilt their homes. Craftsmen returned to work. Smaller kingdoms appeared, and from the ruins of the Bronze Age, a different world began to rise. As the old world disappeared, a different metal began to spread. Iron, unlike bronze, it did not require the same combination of distant copper and tin. The age of bronze was ending, and a new age was beginning. Writing also began to change. The old palace scripts had belonged to specialized scribes, but simpler alphabetic systems spread. Writing was no longer tied completely to the palaces that had vanished. Knowledge had survived in a new form. Centuries passed. The fallen palaces became ruins. Their kings became distant memories, and stories of their world were told beside fires, great warriors, massive fleets. Cities destroyed by war. Slowly, history became legend. For generations, the sea peoples received the blame. Mysterious warriors arriving from the coast, cities burning behind them. But one invading force cannot explain every abandoned settlement, every failed harvest, every rebellion, and every kingdom that disappeared. Perhaps the drought was responsible. Without rain, harvests failed. Hunger spread. People abandoned their homes. But some communities adapted, others survived. Climate explains part of the mystery, but not all of it. Perhaps the earth itself destroyed them. Walls cracked, palaces collapsed, cities were buried beneath stone. But these people had rebuilt after earthquakes before. This time, something prevented them from rising again. The answer may not be one disaster, but many. Drought created hunger. Hunger created unrest. War forced people from their homes. Migration increased conflict. And broken trade weakened every kingdom. Still standing, the Bronze Age world was powerful because it was connected, but those connections made it fragile when one port failed. Ships stopped moving. When one kingdom fell, its neighbors felt the shock. The strength of their world had become its weakness. Without grain, workers could not be fed. Without workers, the palaces could not function. Without palaces, armies could not be supplied. And without armies, cities could not defend themselves. The collapse began feeding itself. No king could see the entire system failing. One ruler faced famine, another faced rebellion, another watched enemy ships approach. Each fought a different crisis, while the world connecting them collapsed around them. To those who witnessed it, the end may have appeared sudden. 1 year, the palaces stood, then they were gone. But beneath their wealth and splendor, the cracks had been spreading for years. And yet, civilization did not end. Farmers returned to the fields. Families rebuilt their homes, craftsmen created new tools. The great palace kingdoms were gone, but the people survived. The Bronze Age did not end because one enemy destroyed it. It ended because a connected world became a collapsing chain. And once that chain broke, no kingdom could rebuild it alone. The palaces vanished, the kings were forgotten, but beneath the ruins, their final warnings remained. This is Chronova, where history comes alive.